LIV Golf had a pretty successful inaugural season, as it defied all odds to become a mainstream entity in the sport. But while the league did a great job of stealing some top golfing talent from the PGA Tour for its invitationals, a new report suggests that its initial plans were even crazier than that. In today's video, we're going to talk about LIV's original plan to dominate the game and more. So keep watching. First up, Project Wedge. The breakaway league, at its core, was always meant to be a disruptor, as its main objective was to just end the PGA Tour's grasp on the sport and bring a younger audience on board. And while Greg Norman and the team faced a billion hurdles as they tried to kickstart this new venture, including full suspensions from events, they were still largely successful in achieving their year-one goal. After all, it was always about getting a foothold in the game rather than actually competing against the tour. As it heads into its second season, however, we're going to see a lot of big changes, including the switch to an NFL-like league structure. Now, one of the biggest reasons behind LIV's success was, obviously, their player signings. They nabbed some of the best golfers in the world, including Cameron Smith, Phil Mickelson, and Dustin Johnson. And honestly, if you had told anyone back in 2020, they just wouldn't have believed you. That said, while this plan of theirs was crazy, a new report has surfaced that suggests the league's management was really shooting for the stars back in 2021. Called Project Wedge, this leaked plan from the firm McKinsey & Company outlines a number of different scenarios for the Kickstart League, including benchmarks for success, sponsors, potential hirings, TV deals, and so much more. Like, there's really a lot to dig into here, so let's break it down one by one. Up next, LIV Golf wants an all-star team for its board. A lot's been made of LIV Golf's true intentions with the sport, as some people claim they're only here for sports washing for the Saudi government and to ruin golf as we know it. Then again, while some of those sentiments, albeit a bit extreme, may be true, you've also got to admit that they made a pretty positive mark on the game as a whole. For instance, without them, the PGA Tour wouldn't have mobilized to push Tiger Woods and Rory McIlroy into leadership roles, not to mention all the massive prize money changes that came out of that move. And of course, the majority of the credit for that goes to one man, Greg Norman. Now, being the CEO of the league, Norman's got a lot of power. That being said, his real strength, however, lies in the fact that he himself has been a legend of the game and can influence players and the audience alike to listen to what he's saying. In fact, at one point, Cam Smith even admitted that he probably wouldn't have joined had Norman not convinced him. So, the Australian star power does work. But as it turns out, he was only one of the many people in the breakaway league pursuing roles on its board. For instance, the report mentions how they wanted big personalities like Michael Jordan, Condoleezza Rice, Mark Parker, and more. And honestly, if these people did actually end up joining the league's board, it would have essentially been game over for everyone else. Because who's going to turn down the Michael Jordan? What's more, LIV's board would have been a game changer. Alright, when the prospect of having someone like Jordan or Condoleezza Rice on your board is exciting, it also makes you wonder what their jobs would be. Like, were they just supposed to act as quote-unquote ambassadors for the league? Or were they actually going to be a part of some larger strategy? Well, according to the project, LIV wanted to assemble a board that covered aspects all the way from sports to business and politics. And they wanted to combine all these top-level mavericks to, well, conjure up some magical solutions. Besides, with the experience that some of these people have in their respective fields, it wouldn't be hard for them to turn the breakaway league into a successful empire. Michael Jordan, for instance, is not only incredibly well-versed in the NBA's franchise model, something that LIV Golf is also going for, but he's also an insanely successful businessman, thanks to his collab with Nike and many other things. Likewise, Mark Parker served as an executive chairman for Nike and knows what it takes to cater to a sports-loving audience. And the list goes on, with Ginny Rometty, who used to head IBM, and Randall Stevenson, the former AT&T chairman and member of the PGA Tour Policy Board. The point is that while these names may look like flashy marketing stunts to you, they've actually got the credentials to lead LIV to the top. Having said that, when the Times approached 9 of these people and asked for more details, they denied everything and said they'd never been approached about joining. Not to mention, LIV wanted to sign the world's top 12 golfers. As we've already mentioned, the Saudi-funded league's done a great job of bringing some top talent on board. What's more, they've also been super clever about signing golfers that aren't just good at the game, but are also really marketable, like Cam Smith or Mickelson. Then again, it's the world's worst-kept secret that they essentially approached every single person in the top 50 rankings to come to play for them, with the majority turning them down. Not to mention, a report earlier this year even suggested that Tiger Woods was offered close to $1 billion to sign, design for the breakaway league, but he ended up declining. Project Wedge, however, gives us an even deeper insight into LIV's ambitions in terms of player signings and what they considered to be a quote-unquote mark of success. Apparently, they were really optimistic that offering people $200 million plus would be enough to sway their opinions, because, according to the report, one of their benchmarks for success includes signing each of the world's top 12 golfers. Now, of course, the report doesn't mention when they're supposed to be fulfilling these benchmarks, and for all intents and purposes, these goals would stretch all the way to something like 2028, which is also the year for a lot of revenue estimates in the report. That said, signing some of the people on that list might be tricky because we don't think someone like Rory McIlroy will ever switch sides even if the world turned upside down. But hey, things can change fast in golf, right? Coming up, 3 possible outcomes for the breakaway league. Now, apparently, we don't actually know what a top golfer even constitutes, because the McKinsey list actually included players like Sergio Garcia and Henrik Stenson, so they're not basing it off of the official world golf rankings. That said, the list still included McIlroy and Woods, meaning that it was always going to be an impossible hill to climb. What's more, out of the 12 people mentioned on the list, they only managed to sign 4: Garcia, Mickelson, Johnson, and Stenson. This leads us to the next thing, which is the potential future of the league. Apparently, the report lays out 3 possible outcomes for LIV Golf based on their potential success in the lawsuit, player signings, sponsors, and everything else. These 3 are a struggling startup, coexistence with the PGA Tour, and dominance over the game. Admittedly, it wouldn't have taken a genius to come up with these because they cover all bases. That said, the details that they used to come up with these outcomes are really fascinating. For instance, in its most successful endgame and domination option, LIV Golf apparently would have been projected to make around $1.4 billion a year in 2028. And we don't know about you, but that's a lot of money, enough to present the league's Saudi backers with a hefty return on their investments. But of course, this scenario assumes that the PGA Tour would just simply fail to complete and disappear from the face of the earth, which we all know isn't happening. So let's look at some of the more realistic projections. Moving on, the doomsday scenario for LIV Golf. Alright, before we even get into the quote-unquote bad ending for the Saudi-funded league, let's get the middle one out of the way. Turns out there won't be much happening in case of coexistence with the PGA Tour, and things will continue the way they've been over the past year or so. Sure, we won't have all the public spats and lawsuits, but in terms of sheer revenue or success, it's more steady growth than the actual competition for everyone involved. That said, we've got to remember that all these things are heavily reliant on an insane number of factors like the TV rights, sponsorships, and even the league's structure next year. So there isn't really a way to nail this one down without being speculative. The doomsday scenario, however, is much more fascinating and almost feels like a series of falling dominoes. For instance, it starts off by saying that if LIV Golf is mired in its startup status, people will blame the fact that it doesn't have top golfing talent, and that will then lead to less excitement from fans as these players continue to lose their golf rankings. Moreover, this lack of excitement will, in turn, make sponsors question their decision to back the league. Once they pulled out, though, then it's basically game over, as the league will be shunned by the golfing society. And if this series of events does end up happening, then we can expect LIV Golf to lose around $355 million per year in 2028, which just means lights out at that point. Finally, LIV can still be successful without these benchmarks. Let's face it, a lot of these assumptions and expectations set by McKinsey are just straight up unrealistic and fantastical. Because 1, there's no way all top 12 players are going to join, and 2nd, we can't expect the PGA Tour to just back down either. At the end of the day, though, we've got to remember that these are just theories, and even if LIV Golf has missed the mark or hasn't brought Michael Jordan onto its board, it doesn't mean the league has failed. In fact, if the report hadn't leaked, we'd still be out here applauding Greg Norman for a successful first year. What do you think? Do we make valid points about the league's benchmarks for success and sustainability? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one.